last thing I really want to do is have to look inside. That's why I just continue to numb myself for so long, for over 20 years.
Are you talking about the looking back into your family lineage and not being
Mm.
able to find any signs of addiction?
Obviously, in the early years, I didn't care. I didn't question it. I was too busy doing other things. Priorities weren't there. As I'm walking down the street, it was dark out. He came up from behind me and hit me in the side of the head from behind with a hammer and shattered my cranium. I think a lot of people walk around blind, man, like blind to the fact of who they really actually are, right? And they're so conformed to the ways of this world.
Mike Gliem is an accomplished, sought-after, published author, poet, motivational, inspirational speaker, and founder and CEO of Next Level Movement. Mike and I talk not only his near-death experience after suffering a traumatic brain injury in 2014, how prior to that life-changing event, Mike suffered from addiction and mental health conditions for over 20 years. He spent multiple years in and out of homeless shelters, psychiatric hospitals, addiction treatment centers, and correctional facilities. Now, through all of the pain that he's experienced, Mike has found his ultimate purpose, helping others. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, leave a thumb up and a comment in the video. Please share with someone that you know will get value out of it. And don't forget, Knocking Doors Down is also on Apple Podcast and Spotify, where you can leave a rating and a review.
Mike, my brother, looking good.
What's happening, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad we did this. I was familiar with you, and then the other day I was like, forget it. I'm just gonna actually reach out finally and go, hey, let's have a conversation. So it came together.
Yeah, no, it was good timing too. Because as we kind of chat before a little bit, I'm just kind of getting back in the swing of things and coming on some podcasts and doing some interviews and stuff. So I feel like God's directed me in a certain way. So I'm gonna follow that path, man. And this is part of it. And I think it organically happened on purpose and for a purpose, I think, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Glad to be here, man. I'm super glad to be here. It's grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, and then we're going to get into your book, The Long Road Home, A Journey Out of Darkness. But where I start always, my day starts with gratitude. So I'm curious about 3 things that maybe in reflection you're grateful for today.
Yeah. And it's funny you asked me that too, because I've been doing a lot of group facilitation in an inpatient treatment center, and there's a morning community meeting that I attend every morning with the patients, and it's a check-in, obviously in the morning. It kind of set the tempo for the day, and that's part of what you're grateful for. Carry the attitude of gratitude. So for me personally, I first and foremost God. First and foremost, above all else. There's no question about that. I literally give you a list A to Z, right? From the big things to the small things. But, if I'm narrowing down to 3, for sure, absolutely, I would say God, my family, for never truly losing hope in me, for sure, and being there in my corner, and to be able to have that relationship back with them that I lost for nearly like a decade. My wife, my children, for sure. And just the opportunity to be able to do what I do today, to be able to find, I'm truly grateful to be able to find what my purpose was and my calling was, and to be able to truly walk in my calling. Yeah. And that in itself is more than I think many can say. So I'm extremely grateful for that.
Yeah, those that are just listening, not watching, chills again. My brother chills again, because I know what you mean.
Yeah, man.
And it's the thing. I don't know if you've gotten this when you speak, or maybe people that aren't in recovery. I tend to talk to teenagers, junior, senior year, and I'll go and kind of share my story and some knowledge. And it seems every time one of them goes like, why do you say that you're grateful that you're in recovery? And I said, I would have been a man just seeking pleasure until God took me. But he gave me the opportunity to find purpose through all the pain.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, through self-exploration too, right? Through that whole process, the recovery process of figuring out who you really are. I think a lot of people walk around blind, man, like blind to the fact of who they really actually are, right? And they're so conformed to the ways of this world and the culture that it is today, and just the country as it is as a whole, man. I can ask people, and I do this to people. I'll ask, like, who are you, right? And they'll tell me their name, and I'll say, no, that's the name you were given at birth. That's what people call you. And then usually they'll follow up with what they do for a living. And I'm like, no, that's your vocation. That's how you pay your bills. And a lot of people can't answer the question any deeper than that. Like, they sit there and have to really, truly think any further than that. And it's like, it's mind blowing. Like, you really don't really know yourself as well as you think you do. so like, so, you know what, that's another reason, like, I'm so grateful to be in recovery, is because I really like figured out who I am to the core, right? And which I lost, right, in 2014, which we can talk more about that obviously as the show goes on. But you know, I lost who that person was, and gratefully so, because that person is dead and gone and no longer with us, thankfully, because he would not be on this show right now. You know, but then I was able to kind of reinvent who I wanted, who I felt called to be, and kind of who I wanted to be. I was able to rewrite the next chapter of my life, man.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
Let me ask you about that rewrite and purpose. And some people go, that's spot on, or they go, I've never thought about it that way. But I always say, I wouldn't have known what I wanted my purpose to be unless I didn't go down my recovery journey and explore what my values are.
Yeah.
What do I value?
Yeah, definitely, man.
Because I think at our core, that says who we are. And that's how then we can go, you know, we love the buzzword in recovery and mental health lately. And I'm not knocking anyone, but the authenticity.
Yeah,
Someone, like, what does that mean? And it's like, well, you know, and then they kind of dance around it. I'm like, okay, tell me your values. And are you aligning with those?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
yeah. And I think most don't. You know, I think most don't. I think most people are in such a rush, in such a hurry, that they just don't even honestly take the time to figure it out, man. I think a lot of people, like I said, are walking around just directionless with, you know, and they might have goals and aspirations, things they want to do. But again, it goes back to, is that truly aligned with, you know, your true authentic self? And that's huge for me too, by the way, too. It's funny you brought that up, because like, that's something I preach through and through, is finding your authenticity, because I really do feel like that really is a superpower, man. Like, if I can be the same person, because it doesn't even have to do with whether you're in addiction, recovery, any of that, any person, any human being. If you can be the same person in all areas that you go, right, with your family, your children, your pastor, you know, your job, with your coworkers and your boss, and you know, maybe your friends, and like whatever crowd you may be on, if you can be that one same person in front of all of them, which I think most people don't quite get, you know, and then that's the authentic self. And you know, to be able to do that is it's a beautiful thing to be able to do.
Yeah,
it's hard to figure out though sometimes.
It is. And you know, and it's still, you know, I'm not sitting here preaching like I'm perfection of anything, any kind. A, I never will be. B, I don't want to. There was only one perfect being, and I don't want that job. But but I've definitely gotten better about continually doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, honestly, right? Sure. Yeah, what are you doing when no one's watching? For sure. Yeah, man.
Well, and I think it's something before we hit the record button that was really intriguing to me, and I think would bring value to you know, the listeners that I know that reach out. Is, you know, you talking about the looking back into your family lineage and not being able to find any signs of addiction.
No, you know, and obviously in the early years, I didn't care. I didn't question it. I was too busy doing other things. Priorities weren't there. Didn't really care. But, you know, yeah, man, as I figured out who I was again, you know, I did look back, and, you know, because I know my mother and father, I grew up in a good household. There's, you know, no fingers I can point there, you know, and, you know, and then as I kind of look further and further down the line, it's just, I don't see anybody with any kind of, you know, maybe slightly mental health, maybe a little bit, but I don't see any, you know, addictive traits really at all, man. Whether, especially drug addiction, right, or alcoholism. Yeah, so I'm the black sheep, man, for sure. But, you know, and it worries the shit out of me at the same time, though, man, because sure. You know, I have 6 children altogether, and you know, I have two step children. I have 4 biological sons, and you know, and they're all spread far apart in ages, and you know, all the way down the line, and it scares me because it's like I'm the one introducing the gene into the family, kind of, you know, so it's like, you know, something I always worry about. And hope that I guide them in the right direction, but they never want to hear it from their parents.
No,
As much as we might know, they don't want to hear it from us.
Well, I only got two, and I'm about 50-50 on the one to hear it from, and the other not so much. And
yeah.
But the way I broke it down, Mike, and maybe this will help. I don't know your kids, of course, and their level of curiosity, but when I was talking to one of my kids, I was talking about there was an experiment done on these worms, and I forget what kind they were, and they would shock them, and this light would go on above them. And they did this over and over and over, and eventually they stopped shocking them, and every time the light came on, they had the same response, a trauma response, really, to that light, that stimulus. And it took 30 generations before that response was washed out.
That's wild.
So, like, when I talk about it, it's kind of like, look, you understand what fentanyl is. You know it's in these drug supplies. It's in everything. Like, I get you're probably going to, try alcohol. Hopefully it's not hopefully it's the thing you can do responsibly. I've known people that have done that. Very few. Or some. I have examples of friends that have never touched a drink or a drug ever. So, I present like, hey, it's still an option. Your life will be okay. But understand that if you're sitting there and you're getting the response like the light without the shock, it's time to call dad and say, I need some help.
Yeah. Oh, God willing, man.
Knocking Doors Down by Carlos Vieira. Now available wherever you get audiobooks.
I wasn't done partying, and I didn't want the binge to end. I think I knew that when I finally got home, I'd have to face what I had done, and I wasn't ready to do that. Being responsible for my actions wasn't something I was looking forward to. I had abandoned my wife and baby, my family, and my business. I wanted to avoid the shame of returning to what I had left behind. Even though I was not yet going home, I wasn't sure I had enough resources to continue the binge.
Click the link in the podcast description to find out more.
The We're Out of Time podcast with Richard Taite, musician and social media influencer Andrea Russett.
How long you got?
As of today, 2 weeks.
Model and Instagram sensation Lacey K. Summers.
You've never done a drug or a drink, have you?
No.
The star of Netflix Tall Girl Ava Michelle.
The next morning, I found him, and
you found him?
I did find him.
The We're Out of Time podcast with the man who revolutionized addiction treatment, Richard Taite. Subscribe now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. We'reOutOfTime.com, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
As far as my children, there's been experimentation, obviously, that I'm aware of, right? My one son lives on campus in college, and he openly talks about his shenanigans. So and he knows my past, my history. I'm literally an open book. So there it is. And then my stepson also has some challenges that he goes through, and he's on the right path right now, which is I'm super, super grateful for that, for sure. Yeah. So
well, let's talk about you spoke about the challenges that you had. About what age did you start to see these challenges come up? Because I know for me, it was around the time of puberty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it probably about the same. Yeah. It was for me, really, like, as far back as I can, there's not too much, honestly, I remember in my life. And that, mind you, 10 years ago, I had a traumatic brain injury, but there's not much, honestly. Like, there's a few memories that kind of actually stand out prior to any substance use or alcohol. So, I mean, it goes back to, 13 years old, and it was self-medication, all the way. It was definitely crippling anxiety, severe depression, major depressive, wasn't diagnosed, and I'm born in 82, right? So, this was, early 90s. Things were different back then, right? Obviously. And, so I did open up about it at one point, and opened up to my mother about it. And, not much longer, there was, a knock on my door, and it was the police, and they escorted me kindly to a psychiatric unit. Mm-hmm. And from that point, man, I just, that stuck out to me, because any memory, when your brain takes that snapshot of a memory, it's the higher the emotional quotient that's attached to it is what makes it stands out. That's why we can remember things from so far back, and some things not so much. And I'll never forget it like it was yesterday, because I just remember the feeling I had when I saw them, and then they put me in that unit. It stuck with me, and I held on to that for like 20 years, as I continued down that course. Because for me, I thought, if I do open up about this, if I talk about these things, then I'm going to be punished, and that's kind of how I felt. And I held on to that, man. I held on to it. And then, and then I kind of, as the years progressed though, like I did know better and knew that there were therapeutic, options and things like that. But at that point I was so far gone that, if I was even willing to entertain the idea of the therapeutic aspect, which was very, very minimal, to begin with. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I could see how that would, set anyone down a certain course. And it's weird. And it's the hard thing about, like, maybe in reflection now as parents from when, our parents were parenting, and I know my parents did the best they could, and they were loving. They were loving, despite my dad's issues with substances and my mom trying to hold it together. They were both loving people, and they still are. They're, beautiful people, and I love and adore them. And I hold, I'm like, man, what they came from, they both did pretty awesome, really.
Yeah. Definitely, man. Yeah,
so
it came from a place of love, though, and we talk about it to this day, and I know my mother for sure, is she holds some emotions about it for sure. But she didn't know better, man. Like she didn't know how to handle it. And like I said, I was a black sheep. Like I was complete. I have a biological sister who's older than me, and we were polar opposites. She's a couple years ahead of me, and she even has blonde hair, blue eyes. Like we are like as far apart as you could possibly be, really, and especially growing up. And I'm getting in all this trouble at such a young age, and she did fantastic in school, was heavily involved with youth group and the church and stuff like that. And we just went totally separate courses. So she just was not, my father and my mother were just not prepared for it, and they did the best they could, man. And, there's no blame there.
Yeah. That's funny because my brother and I are quite opposite too. He's a normie, but he's gnarly in an awesome way. He's a perfect big brother.
Really. There you go.
He's like look at him, and he sends me, like I was telling, he lives in Indiana, sends me a video. Here he is, just shorts, shoes on. It's snowing out. It's like 5 below. Rucksack on, only no shirt, and he's like, got to get in 2 miles. It's like you're a nutcase. I love it. I want to be that nuts.
Man.
In the good way. So what was like that experience of being a young person and going into that first institution and going through that? I would think it would set something in motion one way or the other. Like there's no one that can help me, or there is someone that you resonated with.
Well, for me, that's where I learned how to quickly lie, manipulate. Like that's really what I picked up best, because I just wanted to get out as fast as possible, right? And I figured out that I'm just going to try to talk my way out of this, and I was able to do so. So I didn't stay very long, and that's something else that kind of held on to me, that I kind of held on to, right? And moving forward, and I continued to do that also in other therapeutic aspects and stuff. And anytime I went anywhere, whether it was during childhood, adolescent years, or into my adulthood. Like, honestly, anytime I went into a treatment center or a psychiatric unit, I typically most times would look like a role model patient from the outside. I looked like I was thriving and doing all the right stuff. And inside, I'm absolutely broken. I don't want to be honest. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to expose, my inner demons. I don't want to bring things to the surface, because the last thing I really want to do is have to look inside. And that's why I just continued to numb myself for so long, for over 20 years.
Yeah. It's thank you for sharing that, because that's, I think, such a big part maybe of the journey that people that are listening, maybe that haven't struggled but have a loved one that struggled with substances may not understand is it's such a huge part of that protection mechanism. Once we learn how to kind of I'm a recovering people pleaser,
Yeah.
It's just, there's people that meet me now and it's like that knew me then. And they're like, wow, are you sure you're the same person? It's
Yeah,
like,
man.
no, I'm the same
Yeah.
vessel, but not the
Yeah,
same
right.
person. Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna take. I'm not gonna take this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a hard transition to make to where we really have to look at ourselves and go,
Yeah.
I'm doing so much to continually avoid myself at the end
Mhm.
of the day, be that a drug, a drink, buying something, whatever it is, the next relationship,
Oh
guilty as
yeah.
charged with that. Um,
Same. Guilty.
Whatever
Yeah.
it is, just that avoidance of self at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah, codependency. I think that's a big one for me. It was always, throughout all my years. Yeah, like since that age, since everything started, like that was the easiest other way outside of drugs or alcohol. I found a way to get outside of self was somebody else, right? And to kind of and also just that external validation that I so desperately seeked and so desperately wanted, was to just feel wanted, be accepted by someone, anyone, right? Because I didn't accept myself by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. So
Oh, I know.
yeah.
If it came with a pretty smile and nice eyes.
Yeah, that
Told
yeah.
me good things about me. Oh.
Yeah.
That's-
Which played a crazy part later on in my story too, which is, which ended up in divorce. And but my daughter, yeah. Yeah, good times.
Well, I'm guessing you can relate to that, having somebody co-sign your BS then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh Lord. Well, hey, I mean, you chair, you opened up the door there. Like, I'm gonna step in.
Yeah. So no, so like, well, man, we'd have to kind of like, put me in it. I'd have to put myself in that position where it went. So my turning point, right, is kind of where, where I ended up refinding myself and redefining myself, honestly, was in 2014. And, I just had done a bunch of jail time. I was wanted in like 5 different counties in southeastern Pennsylvania, and I bounced around from jail to jail to jail. And finally, by the time I got out of there, I finally get discharged to a recovery house back down in Frankfurt, Philadelphia, where I spent a lot of years, doing not such great things. And a long story short, not a great place to be in, right? The first thing when I walk in this house is I see the house manager smoking crack, and I'm like, this is fantastic. And that was the most time I had put together, mind you, just from being in a jail. So all those times during the jail times and stuff was really the most time I've ever put together up to this point in my life was when I was forced to, right? And needless to say, there was no working on myself, no inner work being done or anything. It was just living that lifestyle. And so I got back into, and I got into this recovery house, and I actually kind of did want it in the beginning, right? There was some willingness there. So I held on for a little while, enough to become the house manager at the house, because the house manager finally went on a run and didn't come back. And at that point, I had kind of taken upon myself to, so we were supposed to be getting like 3 meals a day at the house and stuff like that. And I come in and that's not being done at all. And I broke into the kitchen one day. It's behind locked doors. And I get in there and I open a freezer and it's just full of meat. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why are we not eating? And so I just took it upon myself. I'm like, well, if he ain't doing it, I'm doing it. Like, so I started cooking meals, three meals a day for all the guys in the house. And that was one thing that really stuck out for me, because that was the first time I actually really understood what service really was about, right? And serving other people and not expecting anything in return, because I was a taker my whole life, right? I was a taker, and I kind of quickly learned that there's givers and takers in this world, and takers eat better and givers sleep better, man. And for me, I was a taker a majority of my life, like I said, and so I took it upon myself to make these meals, and the owner of the home kind of noticed the things I was doing. So as that house manager went on a run and didn't come back, he kind of asked me if I wanted to step up to that position. And of course I jumped right at it, and part of me wanted to, and the other part was like, well, you can't pay rent anyway, and you'll be able to stay rent free. So yeah, stupid, do it. Right? So that influenced some of my decision, but so I did. And And, it didn't take long for me, though, to be able to kind of get too invested in everybody else's recovery and making sure that they get where they need to be, and putting my own stuff on the back burner and not really taking care of myself very well.
Have you dug into the archives of past Knocking Doors Down podcast episodes? The Knocking Doors Down podcast archive is available to you for free. Check it out. Here's a snippet from when Charlie Sheen was on the podcast.
I think shame and people pleasing are completely interwoven.
Absolutely. I agree 100%, because I know I greatly struggled with that. Still do at times.
Right. And what is shame really? It's us writing a story about how someone's going to interpret or judge us with us having no idea what the outcome of the next moment is.
This episode and so many more in the Knocking Doors Down archive. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumb up, leave a comment, and share with somebody else that you know will get value out of the Knocking Doors Down podcast.
It didn't take very long, right? And then I'm sending them all out to a meeting just to make sure I can get the house empty so I can hurry up, run to the deli and grab as many Four Logos as I could, and drink them while they're gone. And they come back from the meeting. I'm doing a wrap up meeting in the living room in the house, and I'm drunk, and I'm not the only one, but there were some decent guys there that I could have stuck around with, and things might have been different. But long story short, I thought I hit it pretty well, and I moved out to a step down house that they had. And within that first month, I couldn't even pay my rent, and they come kicking me out and throwing my shit on the front lawn. So, then I'm back homeless on the streets again. And this is after I had already spent 7 years homeless on Kensington, Philadelphia, 7 years straight, every summer, every winter. And if you don't know anything about Kensington, or any of your viewers or listeners, YouTube doesn't even do it justice, man. It is a sad, sad place, man. It is for sure, hands down, the biggest open drug market in the country, if not the entire world. And you can see a lot about it on YouTube, but until you actually walk down there and see just the desperation and the smells and the sights and the open wounds, and I mean, it does no justice. But anyway, so like I said, it wasn't too long before I was kicked out of that house, and got reacquainted with some people that I used to do business with, and I got back into that lifestyle of kind of just distributing things. And I went to collect some money that was owed to me, and it was $20 that day, and things got physical. I thought I had the upper hand. I started walking away down the street, and the guy turned around and went back in his house. And as I'm walking down the street, it was dark out. He came up from behind me and hit me in the side of the head from behind with a hammer, and shattered my cranium. I get rushed to this. I'm bleeding, dying in the street for a little while before an ambulance even gets there. And I wake up in the ICU room and down in Philly, and I literally wake up. I look down, and I don't even know the body that I'm inhabiting at this point. I just see IVs and machines and hear beeps, and I just don't even know. I'm thinking this is a nightmare. Like, this can't be reality. And I scan the room, and I'm looking all around, and I look up on the whiteboards that they have in the room with the nurse's name and the tech's name and stuff like that. And it's a patient named John Doe. So, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And so, like, I don't even know who I am. You don't know who I am. Like, and so I remember kind of going out at that point, and then kind of coming back to at some point down the road. I think it may have been a couple of days. And I come back to, and then that was like my rebirth, man. And so, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't write. And, all these things were taken from me. And I say that in a sense where, because the material stuff we lose all the time, right? Like, that's easy. That stuff, we lose all the monetary things and the possessions and all that kind of stuff. And it's quite easy to get that back. Usually most of the time in recovery, once we're doing the right things, we get a job and things become a little more stable. But to get to the point, and I had so many outs along the way, like God has given me so many outs, when I look back along the way that I just didn't take, or I turned a blind eye to, or whatever it was. And things could have been different, but, unfortunately I didn't take him. But, I feel like I had to go this route. And, at this point I felt like it was really him really humbling me this time and saying like, okay, like, I allowed you to lose everything you've owned and destroy your relationships and all this and the chaos of what you call life, so many times, where it's to the point like, okay, I'm going to remove the ability to speak, the ability to talk, the ability to walk, to the ability to write. And then it was like really like coming from nothing, like that was literally, the bottom. That was the bottom for me at that point. And that's when I finally truly surrendered and gave up the fight, man. And, and I had definitely and this is leading into what I was going to talk about, but I just kind of want to lay the groundwork,
Get that foundation down.
Just brick after brick real quick. So, it was tough, man. And I call that first year, I call it more my discovery than my recovery. I really wasn't able to work like a recovery program quite yet because I didn't know who the hell I was. Like I couldn't even introduce myself. I didn't know the name I would use. Right. So, it was, they finally got me kind of to the point. So I wake up, and when I'm finally like, more coherent, mind you, I can't communicate, I can't speak. And, the nurses come to me, and it's crazy. I don't remember my name, why I'm there, how I got there, anything like that. And I grew up with my family, my sister, my mother and father, like I said, and we grew up in like a religious household. We went to like a non-denominational church on Sundays, but we kind of left it there, and we didn't talk about it throughout the week or anything like that. So it was like religion to me then. I really didn't know anything about spirituality or a personal relationship with God or Jesus, right? And I believed in God. I believed there was a God, but I didn't know about having a relationship with that person at that point in my life when I was younger. And to this day, it gives me chills talking about it, man. So I can't talk, right? And I hear this voice speaking to me, and it's not my own voice, and it's like audibly speaking to me. And I can't remember my name, how I got there, anything. And only thing I could remember was scripture. That was it. And it was being read to me like from third person. And the biggest verse that stuck out, and it was like on loop, right? It was just, forgive them for they know not what they do. Forgive them for they know not what they do. And I just kept hearing it again and again and again and again. And it was kind of driving me crazy. And, but at the same time that's the exact moment I knew that I was in direct contact with my maker. Like that day, I knew I was in direct contact with God. And I held on to that, and I couldn't verbally speak. So that was my line of communication, the only way I could communicate. So I would pray and talk back to that voice I was hearing. And it was a life changer for me. It changed everything. And then they finally come to me and tell me what had happened, and that someone attempted to take my life. And then it clicked and it made sense. And it was forgiveness. And that was truly the game changer for me. So the things kind of made sense at that point. And so needless to say, before I left that hospital, I forgave the person that tried to take my life. And it was a complete game changer. Like I said, for me, it changed the trajectory for everything, man. And I swear things changed like in my brain. I don't even call it like a clean and sober date. I call my rebirth date, because not only did I have to kind of relearn how to be a human again, but like I truly feel like I was reborn on that day. And that's when I engaged in what I know as spirituality, right? And that personal relationship with God and my higher power. And I just left those lines of communication open, man. And they finally ended up discharging me out of this hospital. And it was not an easy road. It was extremely painful. Sure. Migraines every day for the first year, I'd say easy. I was going to physical rehab, vocational rehab, speech therapy, 5-6 days a week. They were taking me in a van. I had Medicaid. They picked me up, and a person from the program, from the fellowship, actually had taken me in, a complete stranger. God bless him, man, because literally part of saving my life. And I said, be able to start kind of working on myself. And from there, that's where like the work was, and not quite recovery, a path of recovery quite yet. It was just, like I said, my discovery and being human again. And I'm tracing circles and squares with like lead weighted pencils and stuff like that. And I finally got to back on my feet and, talk a little bit. I had a terrible stutter. It was like sensory overload. I couldn't walk into a grocery store. I was just overwhelmed. It was just, my brain was it was too much. So they ended up picking pieces of my skull out of my brain. They took a sliver off the left side of my brain, removed it, and then they closed it with they put titanium in my skull, in place of my skull, and they closed it with 30 staples. And so so it was, like I said, it was a complete rebirth for me, man. And
so what you're telling me is, if people call you a hardhead, you own that.
100%, man. I'm like part Terminator, dude. Yeah,
that's 100%. Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I'll take
right.
that.
Hell yeah.
It comes up, I'll be at the airport and I'll walk through and I'm like, take your hat off. There's an anomaly in there. I'm like, no, it's fucking titanium. Yeah, but it was the most painful, traumatic thing that ever happened in my life, man. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, man. It really was. Had that not happened, we would not be having this conversation today. There's no doubt about it. And, so once I finally got to, the point where I could start actually working on myself, man, I mean, that was something else, just the memories as they came back and then remembering the person I was. And it was like reliving it all over again. And it was just shame and guilt and remorse, and just, it was ugly. Right. And I was like, oh my God, like, who was that person? And I vowed to myself, I'm never going to be that person again. Like, I'm never going to do that again. And I feel like it had to be taken away from me in order for me to regain it and use it completely different. And that, I feel like that was like the deal, right? Like, I felt like that was like a deal I made with God, is that I get this back, I earn this back, and I regain these abilities to do it. I'm going to use them all for your glory, and I'm going to do it all differently. And that's what I'm able to do. And it's amazing to be able to do that. And they told me statistically that I wouldn't be able to do any of these things. They told me that I wouldn't be able to speak, and I do it professionally now. They told me I wouldn't walk. I'm walking out my dreams as we speak, man. And it's, they told me I wouldn't write. And I just published my book, The Long Road Home, which is all about my testimony and kind of, the whole journey. And it's also, part educational in there for people also that might not necessarily have suffered from addiction firsthand, but loved ones, things like that. And it's inspirational and motivational in there too. But, but it led me to where to get back to the root of it. So a year later, I'm able to like walk and I had to stutter, like I said, and all this stuff. And I go to check myself mentally. This time I like truly wanted to help. Like, I really wanted it. There's no going back. I'm dead on, I'm staying recovered. Like, that's it. And I checked myself into a psych unit willingly. I put myself in because mentally I still really wasn't where I thought I would hope to be. I was still having suicidal ideation, and there was still some stuff going on up there. And so usually it's like a 14-day type treatment, and you get placed somewhere else. I was there for 3 months. My insurance cut me off after 14 days. They scholarshiped me the rest of the time. They just didn't feel safe enough and let me leave. And they tested me once a month cognitively. Every time they came back and told me I was mentally retarded 3 different times, I was mentally incapable. And through the tests that they did, and that's where I met my ex-wife, actually. So we talk about codependency and stuff. Right. So every time I ever went to treatment before, I always left with a female. I had always left with a female, or we had big plans. I always thought that was the next one, right? That's going to be my wife. And these relationships were always toxic. They never worked out, obviously, right? And sure enough, I ended up marrying my nurse from the hospital, and it didn't work out. Needless to say, I can say that much.
Well, you're a charming guy. I can see the Florence Nightingale happening a little bit there. You know what I'm saying? Come on, look at that smile and laugh.
With my rubber slippers, with my non-slips on. Got through that sober, and I was blessed with a child as well, that relationship as well. So there's good that came out of it. There's good that came out of it for sure.
When did the cognition really start to kind of come back? Because you write poetry too, correct?
I do. It's been a while. I do. I've had a couple things published, like quite some years ago. So it got more into, speaking and speeches, and stuff like that. And then working on the book, obviously, and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely did, because that's where I found my outlet was through the pen. I found power in a pen, man. There's power in the ink. And, every time I've ever been away anywhere, it was like, let's journal, let's do this. And I wanted no parts. Always, I didn't want any parts of any of that kind of stuff. I was like, that's not going to help them. I'm not writing a diary or any kind of stuff like that. And little did I know, right? Like, little did I know. Once I actually did it and actually applied myself to it, I was like, holy shit, like, this actually works. And and that's when, and obviously after that, I had severe PTSD. I couldn't have people behind me. I'm standing in corners even when I'm out in public, right? I couldn't stand in line in grocery stores because people are behind me and I would be triggered. And it took a long time to get over those kind of things. And when I would have like kind of these PTSD attacks, I'd start writing about it. And sure enough, man, I would just let the ink bleed, man, on that paper. And next thing I know, there's pages full, and I had written myself right out of it. And and that's where I kind of found my solution. So
thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask you, because I still have some things due to some physical abuse that occurred that like, there's certain things I can't do. My partner loves like haunted houses, and I'm like, I can go do these other things at this place with you, but I can't do that. Somebody jumps out, like, something's going to happen. I'm going to break. Either I'm going to go into freeze mode, or I'm going to go into fight mode.
Right.
And so it's, thank you for sharing that, because
man,
thinking about it, it's like, oh yeah, I write sometimes, but I've not written about that.
No, I
so
honestly, like, because, and I tell people that, and I work with a lot of, patients, inpatient, and people outside of that as well too. And like, you can't force, you can take them to the water, you can't make them drink, right? That goes for anybody. But if you just, like, enduring times of distress and times like that, man, it truly, for me at least, it's invaluable. It is literally like the go-to for me. I should do it more than I even do, to be quite honest, man. But that's where I found myself. The more I could talk to somebody about it, or any other outlet I may have found, that right there, like, I don't know, there's something different, just hits different for me. I put it down, I see it, it comes to life, it's right there in front of me. I process it differently, I look back in it, and it starts with a thought, and you just kind of let it keep going, and it's like there's more correlating thoughts that, now, had you just thought that, you wouldn't have thought this whole 2 pages out, right? Like, you just kind of let it go, and sure enough, like, for me at least, I write myself right out of it.
Yeah. When did you decide that you were going to do Next Level? When you were going to start a nonprofit and get that going?
So the nonprofit was Recovery Army Outreach. We started that in 2020, I want to say. I think it was around COVID. So that's the kind of found. It was like my fiance now. Her name is Jen. Me and her, we started a nonprofit, and that was to go back and do outreaches down in Kensington, where I spent the 7 years homeless out in the streets, and give back to the community there. And we bring like a few SUVs full of clothing and toiletries, and we bag up lunches and all kinds of stuff and bring them down there. And we brought barbers down. And linked up with one of the churches, and they served meals down there too. So we did some stuff with them also. So we did that for a little while, but then it kind of got to the point with that where it got really like to the point where it's so dangerous down there for even people that were coming down doing outreaches, that I didn't feel comfortable even coming down with volunteers. Like, God forbid, like, someone didn't come home. Like, I don't think I'd be able to kind of go forward. So that we still have it. It's just kind of on hold for the moment.
Understandable, because a lot of people that don't know, because very few people, I think, in our country are really aware of trank and what trank is, and that was like one of the point, ground level of it. And it's sad. So for those who don't know, it's fentanyl mixed with xylazine. Thank you. And you had mentioned it earlier about people's flesh being eaten off the bone, and that's what it is. And I got into it with someone the other day. They're like, well, it's sad people are accidentally dying of fentanyl. I'm like, whoa. This isn't the press pill hidden thinking you're getting. These are people that are full-blown fentanyl addicts that now have a chemical added to it because it lasts longer.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Sure.
And
Yep.
yeah, these are addicts of fentanyl. Get
Yeah,
real
no,
about
yeah,
this,
definitely.
people.
Yeah, and like when I was out there, that wasn't that, it was, far in between,
Right.
and that's like, if you did, it was like, all right, where is it, right? Because we'd go look for it. Yeah, and that's like the crazy insanity, crazy thinking, when you see somebody overdose on the street and you're like, all right, well, where'd they get that from, right? You want to go get it. Like, that's how crazy it is. And yeah, and that was the tranquilizer. It's insane, man. The way that has hit. It's in everything, man. It's literally in everything. Fentanyl's in everything. There's no more dope on the street. There's no more heroin on the street.
No. I challenge anybody to
to
find someone like, I do heroin. It'd be like, how do you even get that?
Yeah,
Nobody's doing it. Nobody's cultivating crops.
No, seriously.
Like blow is the cheapest it's ever been in our country, ever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I'm not talking about as compared to inflation, and that I'm not sitting here telling anyone go get that, because you're probably 70-90% of it has fentanyl in it.
Right. It won't be. Right. Exactly.
So be aware of that. Meth, where I live around here, it's in all the meth. It's in all of it.
Yeah, definitely, man. But yeah. So,
anyway.
So we kind of, as I kind of progressed, and I got into working in the treatment field for, after I was a couple years into my recovery, and kind of have been since. And that's where I finally was able to get back to work after the brain injury and stuff like that. And I got back into sales and marketing, and it just was not this. I came from a background of sales and marketing. And when I got back into it, I was doing well, but it just was different. And I was just not happy. I was stressed out. I was not, it was just affecting my recovery. So I decided to step into the field and start at the ground level and kind of work my way up. And, that's where I found like real fulfillment, man. And, where my job really didn't feel quite like a job anymore, to be able to do that. So it kind of, fast forward to kind of where we're at, a couple years ago, I decided to start really recovering out loud, right? And like sharing my story and sharing my testimony, kind of wherever and whenever I had the opportunity. And it kind of led into some opportunities, and I met some incredible people. Nick Henning and Sheena Henning is a couple that they mean so much to me, man. They gave me kind of my first opportunity. They had started a magazine then that was We Are Warriors, and I remember seeing an article. My fiance and I came across it that they were looking for writers, and I was writing at the time, and she said, "Why don't you just put in for it?" And I really wasn't going to, and she kind of encouraged me to do it, and I did. I think I recall him saying, "Well, that we don't really have any more open slots, and you can send me something though if you want." And I sent something over, and he came back and he was like, "Wow, you can actually write." I was like, well, "Yeah, I guess so." And he's like, and Sheena, his wife, had read it, and she was like, that's a speech. That's more like a speech. And then we got on the phone, and then they heard me talk, and they're like, "Oh no, you need to be speaking. You need to be speaking." And that's kind of what like opened a door for me that I wanted to open, and I wasn't sure if it was really going to. And that was like the one shot that I needed, and the confirmation that I needed to kind of start going that direction. And just over the years of taking speaking engagements and doing that kind of stuff, and traveling and doing some speaking, and then it came along with just the value I found in finding what that true self is, finding what your authentic self is, the value of that, where it can be applicable to anybody, and kind of help coaching people get there, and what's that look like to them, and what is your purpose, and how do we find that, and how do we get you there, and that kind of stuff, and kind of incorporate all of it. And then self-development workshops. Like, I love facilitating groups and workshops with people and get them engaged and kind of really get under the surface and kind of stir some spirits and stir the emotion. And that's it's kind of a mix of all of it. And that's when we came up with the Next Level movement. It's more than a message; it's a movement, and that's what I do now. So yeah, man, it's been a blessing to be able to do that now. So now, looking into. Now we're really like ramping up to really go like full time with, traveling, speaking, taking on engagements and self-development workshops, different treatment centers across the country. The book was just published too. So I submitted the manuscript to some different publishers, and it was picked up by Christian Faith Publishing. And obviously I'm aligned with that. Right. So, blessed, man. And that's it there. And, just proud of it, man. It's something I never thought, I would really accomplish ever in my life. And, I remember like saying to myself at a certain point in my recovery, a few years in, like, I should really write a book. I would love to do that. But it was just, for me, it was like an impossible feat. Like I saw it as like this huge daunting task would never get accomplished. And then I just, was able to speak to some other people, and some other people had experience and come up with an outline. And then I kind of broke it down from there and then into chapters. And then I went back and kind of, elaborated on every one of them. And next thing you know, turned into a book. And man. That. And I'm able to glorify God in the process, man. And so that's what's really been incredible about it.
Well, I love it because, the things you shared, Mike, it's that you came into a God conscious, which has been so important. Like it's that thing when we become aware of anything, as I say, it is the we are effed moment. Because once you can't go back.
Yeah.
And let alone to show the power of the mind. I mean, I hope people got this. Sure. You didn't even know who you were.
Yeah.
You didn't know how to speak, right? Couldn't write, couldn't walk, For people that are listening, you look like you're in good shape, taking care of your body and everything else. Like all of this stuff, like if you are in a place of doubt and everything else, look, like I don't like to preach, but if you sitting there telling yourself God can't do it for you, you're missing out. Because once you can embrace that, and I know that voice, I know that third person voice. The first time I heard it, I got chills talking here. Again, this is like the third time in our conversation. Like
every time still, I know.
Your world will change.
100%.
And it's all there. Everything that you have within you. That's why my slogan is no outside solutions to inside problems.
Amen, brother.
People have bought some of the shirts. True. Thank you for that. That's what it's for. And it's true, because once you do, and that like God flows from within us, as I always make the Jedi joke, and I do my Obi-Wan voice. It surrounds us, it binds us, and it's true.
It is.
True.
It really is, man.
When we step into that place, then and we start to just do the work that God wants from us to serve in the time that we are in this vessel here. Like good things start to happen. Doesn't mean bad things don't, or hard times don't come.
Don't get it confused. You can, on the contrary, I find that you can expect the opposite almost for, if you figure out what you're calling your purpose, what that is, and you really truly are walking in your calling, you can expect it to be extremely difficult. Because if you are walking in what is designed for you to walk in by God's will, and you're walking it out, there is opposition. There is someone else that wants that just as bad, right? So there is that tug of war. I think there's a constant tug of war within between good and evil. It's always there, and it's like the two. There's two lines within yourself, right? One is roaring for self-improvement, self-development, and to carry out that will, and the other one is the exact opposite. And it's that old saying, right? Like which one wins? Is the one that you feed, and it's just constantly just making sure that you're feeding the right one. Because I'm sure everybody has heard the saying, like thieves don't break into empty homes, empty houses, right? So like there's value in you. So if you are struggling, it's probably for a reason. And like if your life is easy, then you're probably not living anyway at all. Honestly, you're probably just existing, right? Kind of taking up air. So, but that's what I found. I really truly feel like, and then especially in the moments that get extremely difficult and you feel like you're on a verge of a breakdown is usually when you're probably about to have a breakthrough. It's how bad do you want it? And how, are you willing to push and go to any length and persevere and push through anything? I feel like right now, man, my why is just so strong. Like I will run through a fucking wall with it, and I don't doubt that for a single second. And a lot of that has to do with the people that I have in my corner. And I know with God being the first and foremost thing in my corner, and my family, my children, my fiance, and people that actually believe in me. But first of all, I had to believe in myself. Nothing changed until I finally actually, for one time, believed in myself that I could make a change, right? And it starts there because we can think ourselves, you talk about how powerful the mind is, we can think ourselves into the deepest depression. Well, if you can do that, and you can admittedly probably agree with me, I'm sure anybody listening, that you can sit here and literally think yourself into the deepest state of depression, what makes you think you can't do the opposite?
Yeah.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can, right? But it's just uncomfortable. And anytime anybody hears the word change, they just immediately associate that word with pain and discomfort.
Right.
And we don't want that, right? Like the brain doesn't want discomfort, doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want something different. Change is a scary word for a lot of people, but it's absolutely necessary. You got to get outside of your comfort zone. It is your enemy.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. I needed to hear that today.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, if anyone wants to connect with Mike, those links are in the podcast description as well as information for his book. Mike, this is where we jump into some fun, random questions.
Right? Great. Let's go, man.
So we'll do this, and I'll ask you for what I call the Jerry Springer moment, where you leave us some good words of encouragement. But let's start here. Do you have a hobby or interest that people might be surprised to learn about? Maybe something you don't talk about or share?
Any hobbies? Honestly, man, the way things have been, I don't have a crazy answer for you for that one, because the way things have been lately is just, my family, man. It just it demands me to be there, and demands a lot of time. Hobbies, though, to be honest with you, man, there's not. I love what I do. Like, I love what I do at the end of the day. So it's like, there's nothing. I feel like I created a lifestyle for myself where I don't need to do a lot of things to feel the need to escape my life, sure, right, in any kind of way. So I appreciate, honestly, in the opposite way, I kind of appreciate my solitude. So like, instead of like a hobby of doing something, I'd rather be able to like have an hour or two alone to myself and not have necessarily anything to do or focus on, and kind of, sit and kind of rest in that, to be honest.
Yeah. For me, as as one of my first sponsors, we were going through all these things, and he's like, that's too expensive. And ironically, this is what we landed on. I love building Legos as a kid. So he bought me a gift certificate, and he's like, build Legos again. It's been my most expensive hobby. But I have to tinker. I'm one of those people that I need something to kind of tinker in my hands, and that pulls me into like a meditative space. Like, don't speak to me while I'm doing that, because you're not going to get a conversation. I'm not trying to be a dick. It's just like when I'm in there, and I like, don't you see I'm building an X-wing here? So
I guess it would be to create, create though. Whether it's like writing or creating some like content or something, just creating something.
Yeah. And that's primarily what I do for work. So it's like, I just need a different space to do it, a different type of thing. That's just like, this is for me, So, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Oh, I'm a morning person. Yeah. And I never was, man. I never was. I hated the morning. I hated it.
Right.
No, you can ask my fiance, man. I am up religiously at 4 a.m. every day.
Nice.
I set an alarm just in case, but I don't, maybe twice in the past 6 months minimum have I had to wait for the alarm to go off. Like, I'm up and out of bed before that even goes off at 4 o'clock. I'm up early. And it doesn't matter what time we go to sleep either. I'm just programmed that way now.
Yeah. See, that's an important thing I hope people take away. And I've gotten much better at this, is that it doesn't matter when I go to sleep, my uptime is the same, no matter what. Like, and I think it's part of that dedication to one's discipline, because our discipline will set so much in how we operate with everything.
Yeah, I totally agree, man.
It just really does. As a person that used to drink until 5 a.m, now to get up, it's like,
Yeah.
And it takes some time. Be kind to yourself, and we could probably give all kinds of tips on that, but this is fun, random questions. Do you have any pet peeves, like things that annoy you?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Things. Let me try to think of them. I definitely do, for sure. If somebody says supposedly, it's supposedly with a D. That bothers the shit out of me. People say, that's definitely a pet peeve, because people say it all the time. I'm sorry, guys, but there's a D there in the word.
Yeah, I got in an argument with someone, not an argument, but like a bit of discourse about that. They said I didn't use a phrase right. I'm like, no, that's exactly what quid pro quo means. And they're like, no, it isn't. I'm like, it is literally tit for or this for that. It's like
Yeah,
I will
yeah,
do
right.
this, but you have to. That is exactly what it is. No, it's
Yeah, yeah,
okay. I'm out of here.
yeah.
Forget it.
Yeah, that and chewing with your mouth open. People chew with their mouth open. Yeah. Crit. I can't.
You could have dinner with any one person, living or not. Who would they be and why?
Jesus.
Yeah. I knew that was going to be.
I think
Yeah.
honestly, but okay.
You and I both.
Yeah. So, but if I had to go outside of that, I would say my grandfather, who passed away when I was too young to remember, that I hear stories about and how amazing he was. I would love to be able to sit down and actually get to know who he really was.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's pick two more fun ones. Do you have a favorite fictional character?
Like Batman. Yeah. I don't like the superpower type shit. Like, but he doesn't have a superpower. He's just like that dude, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That just like he's got his equipment and stuff and his Batmobile and all, but like no like extra superpowers and do stuff. I say Batman, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that character because it's the ultimate will to do, and it's the perfect example. I think it's the best example in fiction writing of the two antithesis of a situation. The Joker, we know something bad happened. We don't know what. Like it depends on what you follow. And we know something very bad happened to Bruce Wayne and they went different directions.
Yeah.
And it's
you're
that
exactly
example
right.
of what when we are confronted with, call it trauma, whatever it is, what we can do with it.
So true. True.
And resources, the guy found the resources.
Right. It doesn't, it helps to be a billionaire.
Yeah, right. Do you have a favorite place to visit?
Favorite place to visit?
Maybe that solitude place.
Yeah. It's not really a secular place though. Anytime. So we have obviously with multiple children, there's custody orders in place and stuff like that and everything. So when it's like visitation times, obviously like those, I would consider that's my favorite, man. Honestly, I mean I'm a pretty simple man, you know what I mean, at this day and age, like where I am. I'm 42 years old, man, and it's been this past June was 10 years. It's just I'm at that point in my life, like I'm just things change, man. It's just not much more outside of family and just good people, and that really matter too much to me anymore, man. And just helping people get where they're at. I'm a pretty simple guy these days, man. Lay back. Yeah, I'm pretty chill. My wife wishes I would do a lot more things. She really does because I don't like to go out often. I don't like to really like do things, but
I'm with you. It's just like I like my home, and I can say that I got a home.
Yeah, right. How about that?
It's not just a house. It's a home.
That.
It's like I kind of like it, but
it's got a roof too.
Yeah, right. And walls and
it's got electric. It's got running water.
Yeah, windows that don't have wall or a newspaper up over them or nothing. I'm not. Yeah, Mike, if there's any just words of wisdom you want to drop, floor is yours.
Man, I think we did say a lot of good stuff, man. I think people can take away from this conversation, man. And it's been, I'm grateful to have it with you, man. I'm really glad we were able to join, and really come together on this. But honestly, you know what, man, mental health really does matter, man. And I think, it starts with self and your self dialogue, man. And I wish that, people have really started to talk to themselves a little more kindly these days. I think we're really hard on ourselves a lot of times. And, if you were to, some of the things maybe that you say to yourself, if someone else were to say that to you, you'd be pretty offended, right? And I think some of the things you say to yourself, some of you, you probably wouldn't say to anyone else in person. So why are we saying it to ourselves? right? And we have to live with that person. And we spend a majority of our time in our head. No one else is doing it, so try to make it a nice place to live. Try to take it a little bit easier on yourself, man, and give yourself a break. If your goal was to get through the day, just to make it to see tomorrow morning, and God puts you on that wake up list, man, then if that's what it takes, and you were able to do so, then so be it, man. Then job well done.
Hey, Mike Gliem, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. And I hope
Same,
we get God presents this opportunity to fellowship in person. I appreciate you.
Same, brother. Same.
On that note, remember, no outside solutions to inside problems, and keep knocking doors down.